So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's presentation with Kathleen Forrest. I initially reached out to Kathleen several months ago, kind of right in the heart of the initial several months of most things shutting down, including the business. And I reached out to her because I met her several. One second, I'm just gonna mute a few folks. Um, So I reached out to her because Kathleen and I met a couple years ago, and I just found her background very interesting and something I wanted to learn more about in the future. So this is going to be an opportunity for me as well as you guys to learn more about Kathleen's work. But I found very fascinating, Kathleen, that you've got a background, you had a career for many years in organizational development and leadership or consulting within.
I've lost you. Hello? I can't hear you.
Kathleen, sometimes his web service goes out, so he just freezes, it'll come back.
Good to know. I thought it might be mine. Come back. Oh, now he's really off. Oh, no. Can you guys all hear me? Okay. Well, as he was saying, I've got a corporate background, and it was around change, transformational change, both system and individual change. And I kept thinking, even though I worked with some of these, brainy people from Harvard and in Boston, I kept thinking there's so much we don't know. There's so much we don't know about change, and there's so much we still don't know about the mind and consciousness. And so it took me down a rabbit hole, transformational change and quantum physics. And it took me over so I left the corporate world. I was doing deregulation of the electric industry in Detroit. And I said, I can't do this and learn at the same time. So let me take a little self-imposed sabbatical. So I did that, and I ended up a zig and a zag and a zig and a zag. And I ended up in India for 3 years, not because I wanted to, but because doors just kept flying open. And so I was like, okay, I'll go. And then, are you guys all still with me? Yeah? Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. It's good, okay. So India, meditation for 3 years, I lived in India. And so that opened up a whole another way of being in the world after spending that much time. I think I figured out 23,000 hours of meditation on a mat. And then when I came back, I thought, okay, now how do you integrate this into the work I do, into change work? And that took me into being a Reiki master. But then this forest nature therapy came into my purview, and I went, that's a thing? Like, that's a real thing that you can do that? And so I went and got the certification up in Hot Springs. The group came, they're out in California. They came here to Hot Springs, and they taught 26 of us that time. And it is fascinating, fascinating, fascinating to me. I see you're shaking your head, yes, Sarah, so you're familiar. How many of you are familiar with forest bathing or nature therapy? 1, 2, 3, okay, 3 of you, yeah. So it is a fascinating and life-giving and life-supportive practice. I'll call it that, because it's not a one and done. It's a practice, like you would do a yoga practice or an exercise practice. It's an actual practice. So I took the certification for that, and since then I've done it in the Osa Peninsula, the rainforest in Costa Rica, in Florence, Italy, And then here in Asheville, I've done some as well. So I just find it's fascinating to me, not only as a participant, as someone who can lead people, because it's so individual. And I'll get into a little bit of the process on that. Are you back yet, Zach?
I'm back. Yeah.
Oh.
So sorry, just a internet thing.
Okay.
Everything froze up for a
there.
while, but I'm back. But yeah, I sound like you did a great job telling us about you.
I just kind of picked up where I thought you left off.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, well, just the floor is yours. We've
Okay.
done these calls in the past. I did a lot of similar types of calls back when I wasn't at the office at all. And what we typically do is, allow the presenter to say whatever you like, and at times towards the end we'd open it up for questions and some feedback.
Okay. So I know 3 of you raised your hand that you're familiar with forest or nature therapy. So basically it's what it is, let me back up a little bit. The Japanese in the early 1980s, it was called Shinrin Yoku, is what they defined it as, Shinrin Yoku. So it's basically bathing your senses in nature. And that has set up a whole lot of research in the area around what are the benefits of being in nature, and the findings around phytoncides, which are a chemical that trees and bushes emit. Because we all know, you go out for a walk in nature, it feels good when you come back. I mean, you feel good being in nature. So they've done a lot of research onto why is that. And so the phytoncides is one of them, and just the earth is part of our connection, is our support system. So it would make perfect sense that we feel connected when we're in nature. It is part of our system, our system of living. So it's not a tree identification. It's not a hike. I can do a forest bathing walk in a 1/4 mile. I can do it where people go out and come back in. We could do a trail for a mile, 1/2 mile, 1/4 mile. It's really not a hike. It's bathing our senses in nature. And how it works is a trained guide gives invitations to people. And so an invitation ranges anywhere between paying attention to one specific sense, like the sense of smell, a sense of hearing, or multiple senses. I'll talk a little bit more about the audio file that I made for you guys, Zach's clients. There's a 11-minute invitation on it that to be in nature and feel nature around you and smell it and see it. So there's an 11-minute segment on that audio file. Normally the walks are about 3 to 4 hours. And in that time, we go through a series of invitations. Starting out, you kind of leave the other world. You kind of go into what they call liminal space. You're connecting deeper into nature is basically all that is. And then the final section, we do a Q&A, and I would do a tea, I say it lightly, tea ceremony. We just have tea and chat and talk about people's experiences. There's a cardiologist in Columbus, Ohio that has his patients out walking in nature now. He said, I couldn't get people out. And he says, I had to figure out a way to get them outside and to get them more active. So he does that with them now. A lot of different research has been being done as far as decreasing the risk of heart attacks, immunization in your immune system, diabetes, and there's even some research they're working on right now that talks about the cells that prevent cancer. Now, again, they're all still in process, but that's what some of their current findings are, which I find surprising yet not surprising. All our medicines came from nature. All our original medicines came from the land. So let's see here. Anything else? So in our world, it seems as though that many industries will treat nature as just a resource. That's for us to use. A little difference with our mindset as a guide, it's like we are in relationship with nature. It's not just using it as a way to relax or as a way to rejuvenate ourselves. It takes it one step further where we can be with nature, in a relationship with nature. And that's the other surprising thing about this whole thing, because I thought at first, oh, I've been in nature. Well, my last name is Forrest. What am I going to learn? And it's like, no, really, it's a whole other inquiry and experience with nature. And that would be my neighbor that just moved in. If you can hear all that scraping, I apologize ahead of time. Yes. I'm not sure what else we're going to hear. So, a lot of different. So do you have any questions at this point? I guess let me open that up. What are you thinking? What strikes you? What interests you? What are you curious about?
I have a quick question, Kathleen. I'm intrigued with the sensory part.
Yes.
So maybe you could just very briefly elaborate on those particular senses that this practice touches on.
Okay. So for instance, I can give you an experience. You guys are all inside somewhere, right? So if I have you pay attention to the sounds that you're hearing right now, just pay attention to the sounds around you. Now imagine some are close and some are far. Now imagine that you're hearing it as a symphony. Imagine them as all one sound. They're all one symphony. Now breathe in a way that you can hear your breathing. Hear your breathing in the symphony of sounds that are around you. And that would be an example.
So Kathleen, something I'll share, just a correlation or connection to what you've talked about so far that relates to, so I think you attended one of the presentations that Whitney Madden did on brain health.
Yeah.
She, over the course of 4 weeks, she did one presentation a week. So we had a total of 4. One of the things she mentioned on more than one occasion for brain health was the importance of activating all of our senses and finding ways to do that. And she gave a few meditative type practices that, if not activating all of them, brought in some that we oftentimes don't consider so much. So but she just talked about sensory stimulation through all the senses, how important that is for brain health. So I just kind of made a connection with that lens of sensory, the value and importance of sensory stimulation and awakening to what you talked about already.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, the first invitation that I give people on that audio tape, and it's part of every guide's first invitation, is pleasures of presence. And we go through every sense, and it's in about 11, 12 minutes. And it goes through even the sense of feel, like you're standing there and you can feel your place wherever you're standing. So yeah, that's interesting. Not surprised, but yeah. Huh.
So if we don't have any. Jets, you ask if people are out in nature. Jed's sitting on a mountaintop somewhere.
Yeah. Your reception's a little good for being so far out.
Just a little tricky photography.
Ah,
Actually, Kathleen, you and Zach sort of touched and answered my question. So you have the five senses we're familiar with, and you just talked about the sense of being and the sense of place. I was
Right.
wondering if you ever did like sense of time or sense of balance.
huh. Interesting. I have not. We do about about like, I think some people say there's 13 senses really. And so but that's interesting. No, I have not done that, but time and balance might be interesting to play with. Yeah. So how many of you spend like at least once a week out in nature? Yeah, that's everybody. Yeah. And so if someone would want to contribute, like what's it like for you? Are you walking? Are you hiking?
I can contribute to that. So both hiking and walking. The neighborhood that I live in has dedicated a lot of area, about 9 miles of hiking trails within the woods, instead of developing pools and tennis courts and that kind of thing. So it's very natural. And the rest of the time, I spend a good bit of time in my garden, and I face a forest, basically, an area with a creek running behind it. So the sound is stimulating. And of course, the time I spent in the garden is that way. And I've mentioned to this group before, I kind of call it nature's cathedral. It gives me that sense, that sort of same kind of cleansing, almost sort of religious kind of effect. So for me, it provides that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really a lot of different senses. Zach would be happy to know that it also, since I'm having to squat and stand up a lot gardening, provides some exercise.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I know a lot of people feel that being in nature is their church. It's their cathedral because
Absolutely.
it's that connection to nature. Thank you for that, Alexander. Thank you. Alejandro. Yeah, so it's a big connection. So I encourage to get outside as often and as much. I think of like habits. Anyways, that's a whole other thing. So did you have something to say? You're muted.
Yeah, I was going to contribute as well. This is Marnie. I walk as well in my neighborhood. We have nice areas to walk, and I love being able to be outside and walk in July because I moved from Florida, so it's just such a treat to be able to be outside and not in the AC.
Yes.
And then the other thing with just moving here, my husband and I every weekend go out and explore. So this past weekend we went to Black Mountain and walked around town. And on Sunday, we went up the mountain here, up the parkway, up to the top, and just breathtaking from there.
Yeah.
Unbelievable view. Just, craggy mountain, I guess, is that area. So I was just amazed. You can't put words to that. You just can't. And the pictures don't do it justice. I send it to my family. Oh, yeah, here we are, type thing. And it was amazing. It was just amazing. And the temperature drop, from leaving here to going up was like 15 degrees. I was like, oh my gosh, we're not even that high up. But just that type of thing, and being able to, like you say, take a breath and take take all that in with all your senses. You know, the wind's blowing and, you know, the sun's shining and, you know, it's just, it's
Right.
indescribable. It really is.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And I encourage you to take advantage of the audio file, because even though the audio file is set for Lake Louise, there's some of the invitations you may take up to the mountain trail with you that you might enjoy. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just no replacement for it. And I've got a few testimonies here that I can read you, the people that have been on different trails. Did anyone have another question before I read these?
It doesn't have to be now. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the science of, I don't remember the term, but the chemicals that are released, you said, by trees and phytoncide. Yeah, if you could share a little bit more about the science, or just elaborate in any way that you can.
Yeah. So, you know, we've known for centuries, you go outside, you take a walk, you feel better. So there's multiple factors involved in that. You know, you're moving, you're breathing, you're probably breathing better, you're probably standing straighter. And in the air around nature's, there's phytoncides, and they're a chemical that the trees emit, the trees and the foliage emit. And that is what, I don't know what gland that it stimulates, but it stimulates something within us that is just, you have a better sense of well-being. And so the science in some ways supports what many of us have known, our grandparents have known, but I really don't have any more science facts on that.
That's fine. I just want to understand a little bit more. You answered the question.
Yeah.
Just some more detail to that.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so now I'm thinking of the other stories that I've heard from other people about a boy who had autism and how he was affected by it. I mean, his mood was better. You know, so it's just many different benefits. And I think to speak to that is it's very individual as well. And the invitations are very open, because what you experience is for you. It's not that everyone's going to have that same experience. On any one day, your senses around connecting with the tree may be heightened, or your observation of the animals that are coming by may be heightened. And in the structured 3-hour walk, we do like councils around it, where people share what they were noticing. So it's completely open. It's like, what are you noticing? And what one person may be noticing may not be what another person is. I had someone out one time that they had just lost their job, and I had a private session with them, and as they were going through the walk, they thought, you know what, I feel so much better, so grounded and so supported. And so as certified guides, our role is to open the door for people, and nature is the therapist. So she got exactly what she needed. And that's what's happened time and time again for myself and my colleagues, that everybody gets from nature what they needed at that time. I had one person, she says, I needed to take a nap in the middle of the afternoon for months now. After your session, I went home, I was able to take a nap. So it's just very individualized. Yes.
I don't have a very glamorous place to walk because I live in an apartment complex, but we can go out of the parking lot and down by the river, looking down the river. And that's a very pretty area to walk in. There are all sorts of birds. So if I take my music out, I can listen to the birds chirping. And lately they've been chirping during the day, which is unusual, I think.
Yeah.
But I always feel a high when I come back in. And this has been true with my 3 girls. We would go out because we only had one car when the kids were little. And, you know, they'd go bonkers with the walls. I mean, it was a big old farmhouse. But we went outside and walked, and it changed them. And that was walking in fields. and that was lovely. So just getting outside, and I've kept my mental state up. I've heard a lot of people just so anxious and frustrated during this COVID, and I haven't found that at all, but I'm retired. So I've just been outside and doing my exercise, and I felt fine through it all. I would like to be able to go more places, but it's
Right.
kept me sane. So just being outside really has helped me.
Yes, 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 yes. It's amazing. And it's free and no extra equipment. You can do it in
No.
flip-flops, tennis shoes, or barefoot even. They call that earthing, is walking on the earth
Mhm.
barefoot. They call it earthing. The national parks right now, some insurance companies are going to start covering forest and nature therapy. They call it National Park RX.
That's really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the structure of a walk?
Sure. So the structure of a walk involves a series of invitations. So the first part of it, I'll do pleasures of presence. And that is when we go through all the senses. So that starts to get you grounded in a different mindset. It's kind of like meditation. You're now not paying attention to all those other things. You're focused and present. And then I do what's called what's in motion. And our next section is we walk for a certain amount of time or wander for a certain amount of time, looking at what's in motion. And those are two standard things that all certified guides do first. And then we have options. And then for the next period of time, based on who's there, what the terrain is like, is there water, are there trees, is it snowing, then we have choices of 3 or 4 different invitations. As an example, sometimes I'll have people go sit near a tree, sit near the roots of a tree for X amount of time and just see what happens. Sometimes I have little poems or sayings for everybody, and I will give them each one of these, and they go off and they sit in nature somewhere in a certain space, and they sit with their gift. Sometimes if there's a lot of water, I'll have them sit by the water and listen to the water. That's one of the things I have people doing at Lake Louise, because there's that water right there. So anything from that to watching a leaf to, all the senses. And then after that, we move into the next phase and have a tea ceremony. What I would do is forage something that was in the area, like a long needle pine, and I make tea. So I'll make tea out of something on our path, and then we'll all sit around and have tea. It's kind of like a re-entry. We've spent at that point probably 2.5 hours in nature, in a very personal relationship with nature. And so we sit and we have some tea and a snack after that. So that's basically the process of a full walk.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the comments are, if you'd like to experience the abundance of nature within you, go on this walk. So some people just feel the abundance within themselves. Everybody needs to break down the barriers to natural world. This experience will help. It's a great way to help you feel connected to life. Loved how you, Kathleen, made space for us to experience and share our experiences. So that is a part of the group. And right now I don't do large groups. I think I could probably do 2 with social distancing outside, but in sharing your experience with it. I see a hand up.
Yeah, it's Sarah. So Sarah, you can unmute yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was wondering if you ever have people do sketching or writing of any kind while you're doing this.
Yes, I have done, yes. And also creating something out of found objects is another
Oh.
process.
I just read today from some professional artists, painters who do landscapes. There are always trees of some sort in a landscape. And they were talking about ways like what you're doing to know their subject matter better so that they can capture the essence, not just what the tree looks like from a photograph, but what it is to be with the tree.
That would be very significant.
Mm-hmm.
That would be significant, yeah, for sure. I've thought about creating different, like a 6-week series, one just for writers, because I'm a writer and a visual artist, oil painting, plein air. So
Yeah.
I've done one with creativity. The one in Costa Rica had creativity in it. And another process I've used is mantras. Because being out in nature is meditative, because you're in a way, because you're not focusing on it quiets the monkey mind is what's happening. The monkey mind is quieting down a little, so you can just be present. So there's a huge meditative factor in this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mary, let's see if I can, yeah, you'll have to unmute yourself.
There we are.
There you go.
I'm now unmuted.
Mary Ellen, go ahead. Yes, you're unmuted. We can hear you.
I'm having this incredible experience the last couple of weeks in the morning when I go out into the backyard. Well, first of all, there was these little things moving all over the grass. And as I looked closer and got closer, it was brand new baby birds that must have just gotten out of the nest and must have just left the nest. And so their sound, the sound of these babies is so precious. And then pretty soon, when you mentioned before symphony, what are you hearing? An orchestra like the mother, you hear the mother, and you can see the babies kind of move towards where mommy is. And then the next day, there was a big turkey walking across the yard, and who starts chasing it but my dog. And so the turkey goes back and forth, and pretty soon she flies all the way up. And then within 5 minutes, she's back. And lo and behold, she's the one that has babies. So pretty soon you hear the tiny little voices of these baby turkeys and the mama trying to find them as a result of having lost them for a minute. It's just, I mean, I don't know if I would have ever noticed it before, but this summer, somehow these sounds, I mean, we even had 4 baby bear cubs climb my big tree in the back. Wow. And the mom just big mama just plunked herself down at the bottom of the tree, and the babies were going up and down the tree, and I had never heard a baby cub before. The little teeny voices, they're not the big growl, they're little teeny voices, but it's just the awareness that I'm having all of a sudden of these beautiful things that are happening, right in the morning.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Because part of it is slowing down enough and paying attention to something else. Even if you've always walked on a certain street or a certain path, when you slow down enough and pay attention, you find so much life that you didn't know was there.
So at one point, I even heard a woodpecker through all of this, still making this humming noise, and it's just delightful.
Nice.
Thank you for putting words to all this.
Yes, well, it is. It's like a pleasure.
Yeah.
Like, what pleasures do we receive? You go out in the morning, you hear the birds. It is a pleasure. It's a pleasure for our ears to hear this.
Yes.
Pleasures of presence. And I never thought of it that way either. Like the pleasure I receive from hearing water or the ocean or the pleasure of, I love the smell of rotting leaves. It's like that fall rotting leaves. Like I get pleasure from that. The pleasures of nature.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Anybody else? There's a hand up.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, Krista.
Hi,
Hey.
Kathleen. Nice to meet you. So I'm really interested in, actually kind of looking into what you offer as a training myself, because I'm a huge outdoor lover and also a body worker and aromatherapist. And I'm always, just wanting to invite my folks to come outside with me. So I love what you're offering. I think it's just invaluable. And I wanted to just kind of illuminate a little bit on the science of the support of the trees and the phytoncides, because they are like, the essential oils of the trees pretty much. It's like that's what the trees are producing in community as it's like their immune support. So part of those compounds that are being released that we breathe in as we breathe with the trees, that's their immune defense and their immune support and the way that they keep themselves healthy and vital. And so when we are actually breathing with the trees and breathing those compounds in, it's immune supportive for us as well. So I just feel like that's so beautiful and powerful and really important to recognize. I always feel like when I'm walking through a grove of trees, that it's this like community of support. It's like, wow, every breath, I can just feel this vitalization happening, and my lungs in relationship with the leaves and the trees. And so I just wanted to honor and just kind of raise up what you had spoken to about that, to celebrate the trees and how not just the trees, but the other aromatic plants as well. But that's part of the phytoncides that you were speaking.
Thank you for elaborating on that. I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's fascinating. Part of their immune system that we get to breathe in.
Right. So they help each other out.
Makes you want to save a tree.
Absolutely.
Or many of them.
Yes. And breathe with them often.
If you're interested in becoming a guide, I can't teach it necessarily because I'm not a teacher of it, but I could let you know the National Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides.
Yeah, I've been doing some research. So this is so timely that this came up. So thank you. Yeah, I'd love to be in touch.
Yeah, they are. It's phenomenal. And it just keeps growing.
Absolutely.
It keeps growing. Kind of like when yoga and meditation first started coming, it grows and grows, and people find out the benefits of it, of continuing to do it.
And making it accessible. I feel like that's a beautiful part. It's like you can feel it and be excited about it, but like having a way to invite people in a way that people can receive all in our own right timing and deepen in that. That sounds exactly what you're speaking to.
Well said. Well said. I think I love doing the groups because then it's live, but I'll be doing more audio files. I'm putting one together now for Weaverville Nature Park. There's a lot of shaded areas in that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's fun.
So with the file that you've created for us, most folks, looking at the faces here, most folks are local. There's a few, Alice and Jim, they're both up in the Northeast, Sarah, yeah. But that file has these invitations in it, right? You said there's 11 minutes section that would be applicable, that they could use that wherever they'd like to go and be outdoors and benefit from that process, correct?
Yes, I was thinking about that today for people who aren't local. There's one, the Pleasures of Presence, that's in there. And they could do something with the What's in Motion, wherever they're at. The other invitation that's on there is Sitting by the Water. So on the audio tape, I have it timed out so you're walking along with it. But if you're not there, go to a park where you could be in nature and maybe there's water.
Okay.
You can still experiment with it.
So a lot of that file or recording could be applicable. It may just be a little bit more, have to be creative with their setting that they're in, because you're not literally walking along the same trail that you walked. But if they can go, if they're local and they can go to Lake Louise and start where you start
Right.
there, then they'll basically just walk around that path, and you'll instruct them what to do at certain
Right,
landmarks along the way, correct?
right, right. And part of Lake Louise is watch out for the goose poop. So if you're not at Lake Louise, you won't have to watch out for the goose poop. But in Lake Louise, I have just a little trail up, partway around, and then down by the waterfall area,
Okay.
which is so sweet. And
Okay.
then back.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And that's a 1 hour in total
Yes, I think it's 1 hour and
experience for
Mhm.
them. Yeah,
Mhm.
which is kind of a teaser of sorts of a full-on nature therapy guided session. You said those would typically be 3 hours under normal circumstances.
Right.
With an in-person live with a guide and oftentimes a small group of people.
It is a teaser, but it's also a standalone. It's also not a throwaway. It's a 1 hour intense experience.
Yeah.
But not
thanks for clarifying. It certainly didn't mean to
Yeah.
downplay it at all. I just wanted to help folks understand what that experience is in relative to what they might get if they're working, attended a group session that you led
Right.
locally in the future. And for those that aren't local, is there a resource they can go to and see if to look for folks in their area that may be certified?
Yes, the National Association of Forest and Nature Therapy Guides has a inventory list on their website of who's where and a map that they could find a certified guide. And I would recommend a certified guide for the experience.
Can you say that again? The National Association?
Yes, I'm thinking if I had some here. So it's the National Association of Forest and Nature Therapy Guides.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
That would, I don't know what time it is.
It's 5:45. So in case anybody's got to leave in just a moment, we're probably not going to be on much longer. I'm going to put in the chat the way to get that file so that everything's automated and I'm not doing dozens of emails to individual people. I've set it up that you'll put in at that link, you'll put in your name, first name and email address, and then it's going to give you the and then it's going to redirect you to the page where you can access the file for free, and it's about 59 minutes in total, I believe, so almost a full hour, just a shade under. But if you would also do this other piece, so even though everybody's already on my email list, when you put your name and email in, you'll get a separate email asking you to confirm your subscription. So even though you're on my email list, if you'll confirm your subscription there, then if we have other resources related to this to send out to you in the future, then we'll be able to connect directly with you. So just if you would follow that process, put in your name and email, it'll redirect you automatically to the download, but go back to your email and just confirm that you wanted all that. So we've got a record and can provide you more resources because you've shown an interest in the future. Because Kathleen may be you said you're going to do more audio files.
Right.
More experiences. You did Lake Louise and Weaverville. You're working on another one soon here in the area. So this is a way for people to continue to have experiences just on their own for now by taking the audio with them.
Right.
Okay.
So there would be 3 books I would recommend if you want to learn more about the nature and the supports. One of them is called The Nature Fix by Florence Williams, The Nature Fix. That has everything you could want to know about nature supporting us. The Nature Fix by Florence Williams. Another one is The Nature Principle. The Nature Principle by Richard L-O-U-V. Richard Lowe. Those tell you so much of the reasons of how nature supports us. And also one that's kind of fun, it's called The Hidden Life of Trees. The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter spelled WOHLLENBEN. Wallenben. The Hidden Life of Trees. Those would be three that are really very informative and helpful.
And I just put all those in the chat too.
Oh, thanks.
In case
Okay.
folks want to refer to that.
Yeah. One thing on the audio tape, I think I suggested people put one earplug in. If you put your phone on airplane mode and you have, let's say you put it into your smartphone, the file, you could just have it near you. Like you could have it in a pocket or just near your ears to hear it. So you wouldn't even have to use earbuds.
Right. Yeah, that seems like that would be more ideal because you'd have more opportunity to take in the
Yes.
auditory senses
Yes.
through both ears. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could play around with it, whatever works for you, but to have it not plugged in is kind of nice too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other questions?
Sarah, go ahead. You'll need to unmute yourself again.
I was going to suggest that we just read The Overstory by Richard Powers, which is a fantastic book. It got the Pulitzer Prize, and it's fiction, but you learn so much about trees. And
Yeah.
then also The Songs of Trees,
Oh,
another book that our group has done.
The Songs of Trees. That sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The Overstory, I think I got on Audible.
Mm-hmm.
That's a delightful book.
It's 500 pages. It's long, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did we lose Zach?
What's that? No, can you hear me? I'm here.
I can hear you. There's one area though that's just green. It's a green screen.
You can't see me?
No. Could be my computer though, because I guess I'm on the iPad. I don't know.
Yeah, my video is on. But as long as you can hear me, I guess that's most important. Alejandra, did you have something else you wanted to say or ask?
I was just going to relate a story similar to the one that was being told about, how nature kind of interacts with you, because I was in the back garden last week, I think it was, and I heard something like a helicopter right above me, but it wasn't loud like a helicopter. And I looked up, and it was a hummingbird kind of buzzing me, and it's like, you're in my territory. And I need, it's like, go on, move. I need to feed myself. And it's just so funny the way that nature kind of entertains you that way, that you can't help but laugh, and give them their space. So that's all I was going to say. Yeah.
And thank you, because the more you pay attention, the more you do see.
Yeah. Well, the next time I've just never been exposed to a hummingbird that close to where it sounds like, like a helicopter kind of thing. So it was just sort of interesting. I'm used to seeing them sort of do dive bombing each other, which is entertaining enough. Never so close to you that it's like right here, and you're in my territory, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's wild that they came that close.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. But it's the similar experience. And I think here in Nashville, we seem to be so close to nature that, finding bears and bear cubs and turkeys and all, you can drive around town sometimes and you see the turkeys. So it's just totally a wonderful experience, especially for myself coming from, I moved here from the Washington, D.C. Area, and so that's a totally obviously different experience, So nature is very welcome. It's similar to what Marnie was saying about coming from Florida here. You're just sort of exposed to all of this, and it's your body, your senses taking in all of this. So it's wonderful to have this kind of conversations because, as Sarah was saying, or somebody else was saying, that you help us put this into words.
Language.
Because we're not used to that vocabulary, that language.
Right.
So
And it helps the mind understand it once it has a vocabulary for it too.
It also
Yeah.
helps you understand that you're not perhaps quite so weird that, you know, like.
Well, I don't know.
Anyway.
Well, I'll just say one of my takeaways from the conversation and what you shared and was kind of deepened by what Krista shared with us is it's just a reminder that how, let me put it this way, a lot of the framing, even during this conversation, Skelly, we're talking about nature's this thing out there, and then we go into nature, but we're totally interdependent. We're part of nature. We are nature. We are nature. We're part of it. We've kind of we live in a way where we've kind of walked out of what we call nature and built these walls and these things around us that weren't created by nature itself, that are man-made. But that, you know, that interdependency is very real. And as you, I would imagine, as we have experiences, you know, maybe the invitations and experiment with some of the processes of nature therapy, forest therapy, that becomes a more in our awareness and experience, that we're so interconnected. I mean, I can't remember the name again of the chemicals that you both have mentioned were released, but just think about it in terms of oxygen and carbon dioxide. We're breathing in the oxygen that the trees and plants are giving us. Without them, we're not going to live. You know, we're all dead in a few weeks if all the trees die on the planet. And they depend on us largely for carbon dioxide. That's their form of oxygen. So just looking at it from that perspective, it's just a real simple but potentially profound reminder that we completely rely on each other. It's not just the nature's out there and we can go into it. We rely on each other constantly. The trees don't exist without us, and we're gone quickly without them. So that's just, that reminder is a good takeaway for me from this conversation.
Yes, very good.
So does anybody else have any other questions or comments before we wrap it up? No?
Thank you very much, Kathleen. It was very interesting, and I appreciate your passion for the subject.
Yeah, well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
I love seeing people come alive after 3 hours, even after an hour. It's like people become these, like, wait a minute, is that the same person that walked in? It's just delightful. So my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The link for the audio, to access the audio file, it's in the chat. If you decide, don't click on it now, you decide later that you want it, and feel free to email me. That'll be just fine. And I'll probably send out an email soon to everybody that didn't make it today. A few people emailed me, said they couldn't make it. They wanted to let them know how they can access that as well. So look for a follow-up in your email with that link as well. All right. Well, thanks everybody for taking some of your time to spend it with us, and
Thanks
hope
again.
to be
Appreciate
in
it.
touch with some of you soon after you've done some invitations and hear what that's like.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
You're welcome.
So the cheesy thing would be, may the forest be with you.
Thank you.
All right.